It can be so easy to feel the effects of not trusting yourself. But then when you go to trust yourself, someone says, like, just trust yourself. And that can feel like, what is wrong with me that I don't trust myself? Is it really just that easy to trust yourself? This is something that felt so elusive to me for so long. I would feel the effects of not actually trusting myself, and that I would be overthinking things. I would feel paralyzed in decisions. I would have my confidence be chipped away every time I couldn't learn to know what was right for me. And so, in this video, I'm going to share with you how to actually trust yourself and give you a practice to start to build the muscle of trust. Now, this is something that you will see come up in your life whenever you are starting something new, making any kind of change in your life. And I experienced this in when I was working with the mastermind that I'm a part of, which is part of like Tony Robbins' mastermind. And I would see people come in and they were sharing how they were struggling to go on social media. And this reminded me of where I was about 4 or 5 years ago, where it was a struggle for me to put myself out there, to make posts. And that all came down to this like lack of trust. Like, what am I going to say? What am I going to share? And not even having a system in place. And what allowed me to trust myself in that process was committing to myself and having that personal integrity. So when I started that, it was a 90-day process of committing to myself every single day. And there was a list of things that I would do for 90 days. So one of them was showing up on social media. One of them was working out for an hour a day, drinking a gallon of water a day, reflecting in my journal, doing gratitude work. And there was just a list of things that I would do every day for 90 days. Now, it may seem really like a lot to take on. And it was. When I started, it felt so overwhelming. And there was a lot of doubt. And there was a lot of like, do I trust myself to do this and to live like this for 90 days? And that's a normal feeling. So if you are integrating anything into your life and you feel like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? And there's just this doubt that is circling around you, one thing you need to do is commit to yourself. So for me, it was that commitment that I am here for 90 days and I am worthy of committing to myself for 90 days. So that was the first step. So if you're trying to build trust in your life, write down what your commitment is. So maybe for you, it's a walk once a day for 5 minutes, and it just start small with something. Start with something that you think you could actually obtain and achieve each day. So write down what you're going to do. And then next, what I did was build on that muscle. So when you trust yourself, it literally is like a muscle. And if you haven't ever worked on that or been proactive about learning how to trust yourself, it can feel very wishy washy. Like, how do I even have something to give myself a foothold in trusting myself? But as you commit and as you show up for yourself, that's how that muscle builds. So if you think about having almost like two buckets, one bucket is that you are committing to yourself and you are showing up for yourself. The other bucket is that you are not holding your word. And every day that you actually show up for yourself and follow through with what you say you're going to, you're putting something in the bucket of, I'm someone who shows up for myself. Think about when you go through New Year's resolutions and you start with all this hope and you feel like you can make that significant change in your life. And then February rolls around and then you're like, start to slack and you notice the change. And then you eventually just kind of fall off. What that has done is shown you that you're not someone who follows through for yourself, that you can't commit to yourself. And it slowly erodes that confidence. It erodes your own self-trust. So what the way to reframe that and the way to flip the script is to show that you actually do follow through yourself. And so every time you put that into the bucket of I am someone who follows through versus the bucket of I am not someone who follows through, you build that trust muscle. You show yourself that I am someone who does follow through with what I do, with what I say. And so trust is an action. It's not something that you elusively just pull out of the air and say, I trust myself. It's showing up for yourself every single day. It's committing to yourself. It's saying that your word means something and that when you say you're going to do it, that you are actually going to do it. And that is why it's so important to start small. It's just like working out. You wouldn't jump into a bench press doing like 300 pounds if you've never done it before. You would maybe start with the bar because you know you could achieve that. And then maybe you add a little bit more weight and slowly you build that muscle. And it becomes easier and easier and easier as you do it. You become stronger at it. The same thing happens with that personal integrity. The same thing happens with self trust, that you start with something that you think you can follow through with. So, again, maybe it is just I'm going to take 2 minutes every day just to focus on my breath, really just tune into myself and have a moment of mindfulness. If you think you can achieve 2 minutes, you start there and then you hold that and say, I'm going to do that for 30 days. And it is something that as you're working through those days and you start to see that you are able to do it and you get to day 28, 29, and then finally 30, that's when you realize like, wow, I was able to do that. Okay, I can keep my word. I can show up for myself. I am worthy of showing up for myself. And then you build on that. And then maybe it is that 5 minute walk. Maybe it is that you do a mile every day, or maybe it is that you start to cut sugar out of your routine. Whatever that is for you, you start to build on the momentum that you have. And every time you say you're going to do something, every time you actually follow through with doing that, it's building that integrity muscle. It's building that self trust in you. And you start to realize that you are someone who follows through. What happens over time is that you don't necessarily even have to focus on doing, you become that. And that's where the magic happens. When you identify as someone who shows up for yourself, that then starts to go into all aspects of your life. You start to see that in so many other areas, that you realize that you are someone who shows up for yourself. You are someone who follows through with your word. And then you become that person. You are that person. And you start to lose track of who the past version of yourself was that maybe didn't follow through with things and didn't trust themselves and doubted themselves and stayed paralyzed and not making decisions. This is where your power lies, in that starting small, making these consistent, obtainable actions every single day and knowing the power of your word and following through with it. And above all, realizing that you are worthy of it. That is where self trust comes in. Let me know in the comments if this has helped, or if there's something that you're going to start to integrate into your life. What is the smallest action you're going to take right now that you can start to hold your word, that you can start to build that trust? I would love to hear from you. And I really hope that this starts to become that catalyst for you to make that shift so you can trust yourself, build that confidence, and realize that you're worthy of more. Thanks so much for joining me today.